learn the 4 steps that will help you overcome anxiety. If you are in a place of deep anxiety, or if you're the partner or the carer of somebody with anxiety, then you need to watch this video, because I'm going to share with you what are those 4 steps, how they get you from that place of deep discomfort, deep anxiety, to that place where you want to be, where you want to move to. And yes, you can achieve that, and you can achieve it without drugs, you can achieve it without years of therapy. I'm Jonathan Butler, and I'm the founder of My Fit Mind, and I'm also the author of Bye Bye Anxiety. And I'm going to share with you what I teach people both in my private practice and what I teach people in my book about what are those 4 steps and practical things that you can put in place. Now, there are 4 steps, and I'm going to have separate videos for each of these steps, but I'm going to give you the overview today and start off with step 1. So I want to give you lots of content, lots of value in this video that you can take away. So what are those 4 steps? So let me summarize what the steps are. And step 1 is recognition. You need to recognize and understand where your anxiety comes from, because when you understand that, you can actually deal with it. Because if you don't understand what the problem is, what the root cause is, where it comes from, it's likely that whatever you're doing is just trying to treat the symptoms, and it's not really dealing with the root cause. And that's really, really important. So if you've been doing lots of different therapies, if you've been on medications, it's trying often to deal with the symptoms, particularly with medication. But you need to understand where this comes from. Why do you feel this way? Why do you get triggered by certain environments, by certain situations? So recognition is step number 1. I'm going to go into more detail about that in this video. Step 2 is to reframe how you see things, because we can't change what's happened to us in the past, but we can look at how that affects us and reframe, create a different lens, if you like, for how we see things in the future and how we want to see things now. So reframing is literally looking at things differently. And I will talk in my next video about how you can do that reframing, how you can look at the situation as it is now in a better way that will make you feel better, that will make you feel more confident, make you feel more optimistic about your future. The third phase, the third step, is to reprogram your mind. Now, your mind is like a computer. It's an incredibly sophisticated, incredibly powerful computer. And just like we program a computer, like we command a computer with the keyboard, with a mouse, these days with voice commands, with machine learning, we control our mind. We give the inputs to our mind with our words, with our pictures, with repetition. So you can reprogram your mind. Now, this is something you do not get taught in school. This is something you probably haven't learned about, but our minds are reprogrammable. You need to understand how to put your mind into a state where it can be reprogrammed, where you can think different things, better things that will give you better feelings, better outcomes in your life. So in my video on that module, I'm going to go into detail about that. And finally, we need to reinforce, because human beings, we learn through repetition and we create habits. So again, what I share with you in the book, in the chapter upon repetition, is how to actually turn those thoughts that you want to have, those things that I'm reprogramming, or you can reprogram into yourself, into your own mind. How do you actually make them habitual thought? So a bit like when you first start learning to drive, you have to think about how to do things. You've got to think about coordinating all those things together. But when you've been driving for a while, you do it automatically. You don't even need to think about it. And it's just the same with your mind about how you want to think about things. You can apply this to anything. You can create a habit where it's normal to feel calm, where it's normal to feel relaxed, where you can take things in your stride that might in the past have seemed like huge obstacles, huge mountains in front of you. So those are the 4 stages: recognize, reframe, reprogram, and reinforce. So let me start off then by telling you about recognizing, by recognition, by understanding where this comes from. Now, many people don't understand this, but I'm going to show you something that's really, really important. It's really, really simple. Now, one of the things that always annoyed me about, if you like, the medical profession and the therapy profession is that people want to make things complicated. They want to create some mystery and mysticism, and they'll tell you that the mind is incredibly complex and it takes years and lots of practice and mastery to change things. Well, that is not right. Yes, the mind is an incredibly complex thing, but at its heart, it has very simple principles. It has very simple principles. And when it comes to anxiety, the most important principle you need to understand is that your mind wants to protect you. You know, we have fight, flight, freeze mode, and that exists for a reason. It's an evolutionary thing. It's an evolutionary thing that we all have, and it exists to protect us. So it exists to protect us. Your mind is always trying to protect you. But in lots of ways, our mind hasn't kept up with evolution, the process of change, the speed of change that's happened in the last 100 years and is increasing every year, means that that process of evolution hasn't caught up. And actually in the modern world, with all that change, with all that overwhelm, with all that information, well, there's lots of good things about it. These are all things that are triggering those, if you like, Neanderthal lizard mind thoughts about anxiety. There are more and more things that are making us anxious at a little, in reality, a little micro things, but they remind us, they trigger the responses to threats. So anxiety is becoming a bigger and bigger problem for us. So remember that your mind is always trying to protect you. That is its most fundamental thing that it wants to do. So if you're feeling anxious, the good news, it may not feel like this, but your mind is trying to help. Your mind is actually doing what it's designed to do. So your mind is actually doing what it needs to do. It needs to be re-educated, because what has actually happened to you is that you have taken on board some thoughts, some feelings about yourself that are creating a higher level of anxiety than is useful, than is helpful, and indeed that is healthy, because we're not designed to be in a constant state of anxiety. You know, sooner or later that is going to cause lots of physical issues for us. So it's really, really important to understand your mind is trying to help you, but we need to get your mind out of that place. The next thing that you really need to understand about recognizing where this comes from is that almost certainly the anxiety you feel is going to be rooted in your childhood. It's going to be rooted in experiences you had as a child. Now, if you've had major trauma later in life, then what you're feeling could be a result of that. So PTSD, it could well be a result of that. But for the majority of people, unless you've had a very, very specific adult traumatic experience, the anxiety you're feeling is a result of childhood experiences. And many people who come to me, who work with me, when I ask them about their childhood, how was it? Many people will tell me about their problems, about maybe they had abusive parents, maybe they were absent parents, maybe there were divorces, maybe there was violence, maybe there was drugs, all those kind of things. But a lot of other people will say, actually, no, I had a good childhood. Everything was good. I can't think of any major things that happened. And this is really, really important to understand, because our levels of anxiety are not necessarily related to the level of trauma that we've had in our life. So it can actually be quite trivial things. It can actually be quite trivial things. And I'll give you a classic example. So I worked with a very, very senior academic a few years ago from one of the world's most renowned universities, an absolute master leader in their field. And they came to me because they were having panic attacks. They were having panic attacks standing in front of people. They had massive anxiety that they were trying to mask. And they had imposter syndrome and all these things going on where they just felt anxious all the time. And they doubted their ability. They were constantly living in fear that they were going to get found out, that people were going to work out that they didn't really know what they were talking about. And the reality was that they were an expert. They were in this position because they were seen by their peers, by others, as being an expert, by being a leader in their field. But what came out in working together, in understanding where this came from, because it didn't make sense to them, was that it was about childhood experiences, and it wasn't in the home, it was actually in school. Because they were so intelligent in school that they were different to the other kids, and they'd look at things differently, have different answers. And this person remembered in school being laughed at and being ridiculed by teachers, by the other kids, when they stood up and said things, because actually what they were saying was so insightful and so far ahead of what other kids would have said. But that made them have this belief that they were stupid, even though they were highly intelligent, had this belief that if they spoke up and said what they thought, what they were seeing, trying to give their own insights on things, that they were going to be laughed at and ridiculed. And being ridiculed, especially when you're that age, is painful. It is painful, and you want to avoid it. So this was carried on all these years later when they were in one of the world's leading universities, with people queuing up around the block to come and listen to their lectures. So that is really where this comes from. Now, people often ask me, is anxiety something we're born with, or is it something we learn? And in my experience, nearly always it is something that we learn. It is learned behaviours. It can start very, very early in life. So people who maybe are born to a mother who's highly anxious, who has a traumatic birth, maybe is some kind of substance abuser, maybe has something like bulimia, that can cause trauma in a child from the day they're born. But generally, we are born without anxiety. We're born with perfect confidence. We can look people in the eye, we can dribble, we can fill our nappy, and we don't feel any discomfort, we don't feel any concern about what people think of us or how people are going to judge us. It's something we learn, and we learn it from our environment. Parents, teachers, sports teachers, other kids around us, that is where we learn these things from. Now, many of you will have some kind of inkling as to where your anxiety comes from, but the question, of course, is how do you actually use that? How do you actually take that into the next stage? It's all very well knowing where it comes from, and lots of people who've done talking therapies will have ideas about why they think this way. But here's the really, really significant thing. Here's the really, really important thing. It's no good just understanding this consciously in your rational mind. You need to understand the impact that this is having on your emotional mind, your subconscious mind. And when I talk tomorrow about reframing, I'm going to explain to you in that next video, I'm going to explain to you how you can reframe things in your subconscious mind that makes you see things differently. So if you were that university professor who thought he was stupid as a kid because he had different thoughts far ahead of the other kids, and the teacher and the kids laughed at him, instead of having that deep-rooted belief that actually deep down you're stupid and you're going to get laughed at and you're going to get found out, actually reframing that to see that you were a genius, that you were far ahead of those other kids, and that those people who come to see you now see you and choose to be with you because they really want to hear what you've got to say. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do like, please do subscribe, please ask me any questions below, and do tune in. And if you subscribed, you'll get an alert for that to see the next video where I will talk about reframing, what it is, how you do it. So thanks for listening. I'm Jonathan, and I'll see you in the next video. And if you are interested in knowing more, you can check out my book, Bye Bye Anxiety, Your 4 Steps to Greater Confidence, Calmness and Contentment. And I will put a link to that in the comment section below, in the text below. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.